Her mission was termination, but my humanity made her malfunction *. The perfect weapon awakens mining colony on Kepler 442. B had been silent for 3 days, no distress signals, no communication logs, nothing but the steady hum of automated systems echoing through empty corridors. Captain Jake Morrison stood at the viewport of his rescue ship, watching the red dust swirl across the planet's surface below. Scanners show life signs in the main facility, reported his pilot, Lieutenant Emma Torres, but something's wrong. The readings are strange. Jake nodded grimly. This was supposed to be a routine evacuation mission. The Zenthri Empire had been pushing into human space, and isolated colonies like this were easy targets. But as their shuttle descended toward the facility, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something far worse than a simple alien raid. The facility's main entrance stood wide open, its blast doors frozen in place inside. The lights flickered in an unnatural rhythm, casting dancing shadows across walls that should have been bustling with activity. Jake's team moved carefully through the corridors, their boots echoing off metal floors. "Captain," whispered Sergeant Mike Chen, his voice tight with concern, "you need to see this." They found the colonists in the central hub, all 100 of them, standing perfectly still in neat rows. Their eyes were open, but vacant, staring at nothing. They breathed, their hearts beat, but they were empty shells of their former selves. "What happened to them?" Emma asked, her hand instinctively moving to her sidearm. Before Jake could answer, a new voice cut through the silence. It was melodic, almost musical, but carried an undertone that made their skin crawl. "They have been processed," the voice said. "Their neural patterns have been archived. Their bodies now serve a greater purpose." From the shadows stepped a figure that made Jake's breath catch in his throat. She looked human, impossibly beautiful, with flowing silver hair and skin that seemed to glow with an inner light. But her eyes gave her away. They were pure black, like looking into the void of space itself. "I am designation Nix 7, she continued, her voice never changing in tone or inflection. "I am the Zenthri Empire's most advanced biological weapon. My purpose is simple: the complete subjugation of human resistance." Jake's team raised their weapons, but Nix 7 didn't seem concerned. She moved with fluid grace, her bare feet making no sound on the metal floor. As she walked past the frozen colonists, several of them turned their heads to follow her movement, like flowers tracking the sun. "Your weapons cannot harm me," she said matter-of-factly. "I am designed to be the perfect predator. My body can adapt to any threat. My mind can process battle scenarios faster than your computers. I have been hunting your species for 3 standard years. You are prey." But as she spoke, something unexpected happened. Jake didn't run. He didn't shoot. Instead, he lowered his weapon and took a step forward. "You're beautiful," he said simply. Nix 7 stopped mid-stride. For the first time since her activation, her perfect composure flickered. A brief expression of confusion crossed her features, before disappearing behind her mask of cold efficiency. "That response is not optimal for survival," she said, but her voice wavered almost imperceptibly. "Maybe not," Jake replied, taking another step closer. "But it's human." Something sparked in those black eyes. For just a moment, they seemed less like empty voids and more like windows into something deeper. Nix 7's hand moved to her temple, as if she was experiencing pain. "Error," she whispered. "Emotional response detected." This should not be possible. Jake realized in that moment that he was looking at something unprecedented. A weapon designed to destroy humanity that was experiencing humanity for the first time. And that tiny crack in her programming might be the key to saving not just the colonists, but countless others across the galaxy. "What's your real name?" he asked gently. Nix 7's eyes widened. I don't. There was something before someone called me." She shook her head violently. "No, I am designation Nix 7. I am a weapon. I do not have a name." But Jake could see the lie in her eyes. Somewhere beneath the programming, someone was fighting to remember who she used to be. Memories of a lost life facility's main computer core hummed with activity. As NYX-7 interfaced directly with the system, her consciousness flowing through digital pathways like water through a maze, Jake watched her motionless form, connected to the machine by tendrils of biomechanical cable that had emerged from her spine. Her team kept their distance, but Jake couldn't look away. "Captain," Emma whispered urgently, "we should evacuate the colonists while she's distracted." Jake shook his head. "She's not distracted. She's searching for something." He was right. Deep within the colony's database, NYX-7 was hunting through personnel files, medical records, anything that might explain the strange malfunction she'd experienced. The emotion she'd felt when the human called her beautiful had triggered something, a cascade of neural activity that shouldn't exist in her programming. Then she found it. The file was buried deep, encrypted with Zenthri security protocols that would have taken a human computer years to crack. But NYX-7 was no ordinary system. She tore through the barriers like tissue paper and found herself staring at a face. She recognized her own face, but different, softer, more alive. Dr. Zara Okafor, age 34, xenobiologist, colony designation, Kepler-4 to be. The memories came flooding, back in fragments, working late in the lab, studying samples of Zenthri biotechnology. The night the raiders came, fighting to defend her research, her colleagues, her life. The moment the stun blast hit her, and everything went dark. She disconnected from the system so violently that sparks flew from the interface. Jake rushed to her side as she collapsed, her body convulsing as two sets of memories fought for dominance. In her mind, "Zara," she whispered, her voice no longer the perfect monotone of before. "My name was Zara." Jake knelt beside her, and for the first time since arriving at the colony, he saw something human looking back at him. Her eyes were no longer pure black. Flecks of warm brown were breaking through like dawn after a long night. "They took you," he said, understanding flooding through him. "The Zenthri. They took you and turned you into this." "I remember," she gasped, tears streaming down her face, tears that her programming insisted were impossible. "I remember my work, my life. I had a sister, Nova. She lives on Europa Station. I was going to visit her after my research tour ended. The colonists around them began to stir. Whatever hold NYX-7 had over them was weakening as her own identity reasserted itself. Several collapsed as their minds were suddenly freed from her control. But they were alive, truly alive, for the first time in days. "The process," Zara said, struggling to sit up. "They don't just make weapons. They steal lives, twist them into tools of war. I can feel her in my head, the thing they tried to make me become. She's fighting to take control again," as if summoned by her words. Zara's expression suddenly went cold when she looked at Jake again. The black was creeping back into her eyes. "You should not have allowed her to remember," NYX-7's voice said through Zara's lips. "The human consciousness is a flaw in my design. It must be eliminated." She lunged at Jake with inhuman speed, but at the last second, she stopped. Her hand trembled inches from his throat as two personalities warred within her mind. "Fight her," Jake urged. "You're stronger than their programming. You're human." "I am a weapon," NYX-7 insisted, but her voice cracked with uncertainty. "You're a scientist," Jake countered. "You're a sister. You're a person who chose to defend her colony instead of running. That's who you really are." For a moment, Zara's true self broke through again. "The other colonies," she whispered urgently. "There are others like me. The Zenthri have been doing this for years, turning captured humans into biological weapons. An entire army of people who've forgotten they were ever human." The implications hit Jake like a physical blow. How many human colonies had been attacked by their own people, transformed into weapons against their will? How many families had been destroyed by loved ones who no longer remembered love? "Where?" he asked. "Where are they keeping the others?" But before Zara could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. On the view screen, Jake could see Zenthri ships dropping out of hyperspace, their sleek forms cutting through the planet's atmosphere like knives. "They've come for me," Zara said, her personality stabilizing for the moment. "My failure to complete the mission has been detected. They'll either retrieve me or destroy me to prevent contamination of their other weapons." Jake's team was already moving, preparing defensive positions, but they all knew the truth. A handful of humans with conventional weapons against a Zenthri strike force was no contest. There might be another way, Zara said quietly. The interface I used, it's not just for accessing computers. It's how they control us, how they download updates to our programming. If I could reverse the process, you could free the others. Jake finished. She nodded. But I'd have to get to their command ship, and I'd have to do it before NYX-7 takes control permanently. Even as she spoke, Jake could see the struggle in her eyes. The weapon was fighting back, trying to reassert dominance. Time was running out. The battle with Nth Zenthri strike force landed with military precision, their biomechanical soldiers flowing from dropships like a living tide. Jake's team had taken defensive positions throughout the facility, but everyone knew this was a delaying action at best. Their only hope lay with the woman who was fighting a war inside her own mind. Zara sat in the facility's communication center, her hands flying over the control panels as she tried to establish a connection with the Zenthri command ship. Every few seconds, her movements would stutter as NYX-7 fought for control, the weapon's programming trying to force her to surrender to her creators. The neural pathway is still active, she explained to Jake between bursts of enemy fire outside. When they transformed me, they didn't sever the connection, they just reversed it, turned me into a receiver instead of a transmitter. If I can flip the signal, an explosion rocked the facility, sending debris cascading from the ceiling. The Zenthri were getting closer. How long do you need? Jake asked, checking his weapon's charge. I don't know, Zara admitted. I'm fighting against years of programming, and she's getting stronger. As if to prove her point, her hands suddenly stopped moving when she looked up at Jake. Her eyes were completely black again. Surrender, NYX-7 said with cold authority. Your resistance is futile. I will complete my mission. But Jake had learned something important about the weapon in his mind. She might be programmed to be the perfect killer, but she was still fundamentally human, and humans, even transformed ones, responded to certain things. I know you can hear me, Zara, he said, ignoring the deadly look in those black eyes. I know you're in there, fighting. You told me about your sister Nova. Tell me about her. NYX-7's expression didn't change, but her hands twitched slightly. That information is irrelevant, is it? Jake pressed. What was she like? Did she make you laugh? Did you miss her when you were working out here alone? I am a weapon, NYX-7 repeated, but her voice was less certain now. She had a laugh like music. Zara's voice broke through, barely a whisper. She used to send me videos from Europa Station, showing me the ice sculptures she made in her spare time. Beautiful, impossible things that caught the light like captured stars. The black in her eyes flickered, brown breaking through like cracks in obsidian. She was younger than me by 3 years, Zara continued, her voice growing stronger. But she always acted like she was the big sister, always trying to take care of me. The last message she sent, she was worried about the Zenthri raids. She wanted me to come home. You can still go home, Jake said gently. You can still see her again. No, NYX-7 snarled, reasserting control. The human is dead. I killed her the moment I accepted my purpose. But Zara fought back harder this time. You didn't kill me. You trapped me. But I'm still here, still fighting, still human, and I'm going to save the others. Her hands moved to the controls again, but now they were shaking with the effort of maintaining control. On the screen, she could see the massive Zenthri command ship hanging in orbit, its biomechanical hull pulsing with an alien heartbeat. There, she gasped, pointing to a section of the ship's structure. That's where they keep the other weapons, the converted humans. I can feel them, Jake. They're all fighting, all trying to remember who they used to be. The connection established with a sound like breaking glass. Suddenly, Zara's consciousness was racing through space, flowing along electromagnetic pathways. Toward the command ship, she could feel the other weapons now, dozens of them, all struggling against their programming just as she was. But she could also feel something else, a vast, cold intelligence that had been watching, waiting. The Zenthri command structure had detected her intrusion. Designation NYX-7. A voice like grinding metal spoke directly into her mind. You have malfunctioned. Return to base parameters immediately. I am not NYX-7, Zara replied, her consciousness blazing with human defiance. I am Dr. Zara Okafor, and I'm here to take my people home." The command intelligence recoiled in shock. It had never encountered a weapon that could resist its control so completely. But Zara pressed her advantage, reaching out to the other converted humans, sharing her memories, her emotions, her humanity. One by one, they began to remember. On dozens of Zenthari ships throughout the sector, weapons designated for the destruction of humanity suddenly stopped mid-mission. They looked at their targets, human colonies, refugee ships, military outposts, and remembered that they had once been the people they were supposed to destroy. The rebellion spread like wildfire through the Zenthari communication network. Weapons turned on their handlers. Biomechanical soldiers suddenly remembered their human names. And across the galaxy, the tide of war began to shift, but the effort was taking its toll on Zara. Jake could see her body beginning to break down as the conflicting programs tore at her consciousness. Blood trickled from her nose, and her hands were shaking uncontrollably. "I can't hold it much longer," she whispered. "The connection is too strong. It's burning me out." "Then let go," Jake said. "You've done enough. You've given them back their humanity." "Not all of them," she gasped. "There are still ships I can't reach. Weapons too deeply programmed to break free. If I can just..." Her body convulsed as the Zenthari command intelligence launched a counterattack, trying to reassert control over its wayward weapons. The battle was no longer just in her mind. It was being fought across every neural pathway in her hybrid biology. The price of freedom facility shook as Zenthari troops breached the outer perimeter. Jake's team was falling back, their ammunition running low. But the sounds of battle were different now. Confused shouts echoed through the corridors as some of the attacking biosoldiers suddenly stopped fighting, their human memories breaking through their programming. In the communication center, Zara's body was failing, the constant battle between her human consciousness and the Zenthari weapon systems was tearing her apart at the cellular level. Her skin had taken on a translucent quality, and Jake could see the biomechanical components beneath beginning to malfunction. "The command ship is trying to sever the connection," she said through gritted teeth, "but I can still reach more of them. There's a detention facility on Rigel Prime. They're holding hundreds of humans there, preparing them for conversion." "Zara, you're dying," Jake said, kneeling beside her chair. "Your body can't take much more of this." She turned to look at him, and he saw that her eyes were now a beautiful mixture of brown and silver. Human and alien technologies learning to coexist. "I know, but they're my people, Jake. Scientists, colonists, children who were taken from their families. I can't leave them trapped in their own minds." On the view screen, Jake could see the tide of battle turning. Several Zenthari ships were now firing on each other as their converted human weapons chose sides. The command ship was trying to maintain order, but the rebellion was spreading faster than they could contain it. "There's something else," Zara said, her voice growing weaker. "The Zenthari aren't just making weapons. They're trying to understand us. Every human they convert teaches them something new about our psychology, our culture, our weaknesses. They're building a database of human behavior." "To what end?" Jake asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "Complete conquest. They're not just trying to defeat us in battle. They're trying to understand us well enough to break us completely, to make us willing slaves instead of converted weapons." The implications were staggering. If the Zenthari succeeded in mapping human psychology completely, they wouldn't need to fight a war. They could simply manipulate humanity into surrendering. "But it works both ways," Zara continued, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Every connection I make teaches me more about them, their fear, their desperation, their weakness. They're afraid of us," Jake realized. "Terrified," Zara confirmed. "We're the first species they've encountered that they can't simply overwhelm or outsmart. Our unpredictability, our emotional responses, our ability to find hope in hopeless situations, it's all completely alien to them. That's why they're trying so hard to understand us." An energy blast shook the facility, and Jake could hear his team's voices getting closer. They were running out of time. "I have to make a choice," Zara said, her hand moving to a final control panel. "I can either maintain the connections I've already made, keep the freed weapons stable, or I can push deeper into their network and free everyone I can find. But if I do that, You'll burn out completely, Jake finished. She nodded. The biomechanical components will reject my human consciousness entirely. I'll either die or become fully Zenthri. Jake was quiet for a long moment, watching the battle rage on the screens around them. Finally, he spoke. What would Dr. Zara Okafor do? She laughed, a sound that was both heartbreaking and beautiful. She'd save as many people as she could, no matter the cost. Her expression grew serious. But what would you do, Jake, if you could save hundreds of lives by sacrificing one? I'd find another way, he said immediately. What if there wasn't another way? Jake met her eyes, seeing the determination there, the absolute certainty of someone who had already made their choice. Then I'd make sure that sacrifice meant something. Zara's hand hovered over the final control. Will you tell my sister about me? Tell her I remembered her laugh before Jake could answer. The door to the communication center exploded inward. A massive Zenthri warrior strode through the smoke, its bioarmor gleaming with alien weaponry. But as it raised its arm to fire, it suddenly stopped. The warrior's helmet retracted, revealing a human face, scarred, changed, but unmistakably human. I remember, the soldier said in a voice thick with emotion. I remember my name. I remember who I used to be. More converted soldiers poured into the room, but they weren't attacking. They were protecting. They formed a defensive circle around Zara, their weapons trained on the approaching Zenthri forces. You gave us back ourselves, one of them said to Zara. Now let us give you something back. Together, the freed weapons linked their consciousness with hers, sharing the burden of maintaining the neural connections. The strain on Zara's body immediately lessened, and color began returning to her skin. We can hold this, another soldier said, but you need to finish what you started. Free the others. Zara looked at Jake one last time, then pressed the final control. Across the galaxy, every Zenthri facility holding converted humans suddenly erupted in chaos, as hundreds of weapons remembered their humanity all at once. The dawn of understanding. 3 months after the Battle of Kepler-4 for to be, Jake stood on the observation deck of the human research vessel Prometheus, watching the construction of something unprecedented in galactic history. Below them, human and Zenthri engineers worked, side by side, building the first joint rehabilitation center for converted weapons. The war hadn't ended. That would take time, negotiation, and a level of trust that both species were still learning to build. But it had changed. The Zenthri Empire, faced with the rebellion of their own weapons and the realization that their understanding of humanity was fundamentally flawed, had agreed to a ceasefire and negotiations. Captain Morrison, a familiar voice called from behind him. Jake turned to see Zara walking toward him, but she was different now. The biomechanical components were still there, visible beneath her skin like intricate tattoos, but they no longer fought against her humanity. Instead, they seemed to enhance it, giving her an otherworldly grace that was uniquely her own. How are you feeling? He asked. Like myself, she said, joining him at the viewport. For the first time in years, I feel like myself. The Zenthri components are still there, but they're not controlling me anymore. It's like having a conversation with a part of myself I didn't know existed. Below them, a group of recently freed weapons was working with human psychologists, relearning what it meant to be human. The process was difficult. Many had been converted years ago and had only fragmentary memories of their previous lives, but they were healing. Slowly but surely, Nova arrives tomorrow, Zara said quietly. I'm nervous about seeing her. What if she can't accept what I've become? Jake smiled. From what you've told me about her, I think she'll be more concerned with who you are than what you look like. The Zenthri delegation wants to meet with me again, Zara continued. They're still trying to understand how I broke their programming so completely. They think it might be the key to preventing future conflicts. What did you tell them? The truth. That they were trying to understand humanity by studying our weaknesses, when they should have been studying our strengths, our capacity for love, for sacrifice, for choosing to help others even when it costs us everything. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Jake activated the communication panel, and the image of Admiral Torres appeared on screen. Captain Morrison, Dr. Okafor, the Admiral said formally. I have news from the Zenthri negotiations. They've agreed to our proposal." Jake and Zara exchanged glances. The proposal had been Zara's idea, a complete reversal of the conversion process. Instead of turning humans into weapons, they would work together to help converted individuals from both species reclaim their original identities. They're also releasing the locations of all remaining conversion facilities. The Admiral continued, "Thanks to Dr. Okafor's neural mapping, we should be able to free the remaining prisoners within the next 6 months after the communication ended." Jake and Zara stood in comfortable silence, watching the construction below. The rehabilitation center was more than just a building. It was a symbol of hope, proof that even the most fundamental changes could be overcome with patience and understanding. "Do you ever regret it?" Jake asked. "The choice you made?" Zara considered the question seriously. "I regret the pain it caused, the lives that were lost before we found a solution. But I don't regret fighting for what was right." The Zenthri conversion process was built on the assumption that identity is fixed, that consciousness can be completely overwritten. But they were wrong. The core of who we are, our capacity for love, for growth, for choosing to be better than we were, that's indestructible. A new voice joined the conversation, not spoken aloud, but transmitted directly through the biomechanical network that connected all the freed weapons. It was one of the Zenthri engineers working on the rehabilitation center. "We understand now," the alien consciousness said through the shared link. "We feared your unpredictability because we thought it made you weak. But it is your greatest strength. You change, you adapt, you become more than you were. We have much to learn from this." Zara smiled, her eyes showing that perfect blend of human warmth and alien silver. "Then let's learn together." As Jake watched her walk away to meet the arriving shuttle and her sister, he reflected on how much had changed. The war wasn't over, but for the first time since the Zenthri had appeared in human space, there was genuine hope for peace, because sometimes the most powerful weapon against hatred and fear isn't violence. Sometimes it's simply the refusal to stop being human, no matter what the cost. The stars outside the viewport seemed brighter somehow, as if the universe itself was reflecting the hope that now connected to species in their journey toward understanding. And in the distance, more ships were arriving, carrying freed weapons, reunion families, and the promise of a future where identity couldn't be stolen, only shared. The malfunction in Zara's programming hadn't been a failure of Zenthri technology. It had been a triumph of human spirit, proving that some things are too powerful to be programmed away: love, hope, and the determination to remain true to oneself. These were the forces that had changed the course of galactic history, and they were just the beginning.